Hey friends, it's December 22nd, 2020. Merry Christmas. With the COVID stuff this year, we've made the um, not so exciting decision to cancel our annual Tamale Fest this year. But with the number of people that we've had the last few years, we felt like we didn't want to create another spreader party. And I know some of you have had it, and some of you have even lost loved ones from this mess. And but over the years, we've had people ask us how to make them, and we've even talked about having tamale making parties because when I talk to people about making tamales, one of the common responses is, "Oh, that's so much work." And the truth of the matter is, there's quite a bit that goes into it. But the more people you have, even just two people, makes it so much better than if you were to try this on your own. So I would not encourage you to do this by yourself because it will exhaust you, it will frustrate you. And if you have at least one other person to do it with, it makes it so much easier and so much more enjoyable. And that's part of the tamale culture, really, is that it's to be a kind of a community event. And so I hope that if you decide to try this, you will do that. You'll try to make it more of a community thing. Cindy and I use this as a um, she and I sit down across the table from each other and we talk, listen to Christmas music, and we make tamales. And so it's a great time. We look forward to it every year. And we make, in the recent years, we've been averaging around 1,600 tamales or so. And um, just a word about tamales in general. They're made different flavors, different sizes. They're packaged differently. Some are wrapped in banana leaves and they're large, and ours we like to make very small. If you've ever tried a tamale and you didn't like it, my guess is that you had a tamale that was almost all dough and very little filler inside of it. And so you just kind of felt like you were chewing on corn mush, and maybe it was dry or something. Cindy and I don't like those, and we try to make our tamales more of a 1-to-1 ratio of the dough, the masa, to the filler, often meat. Although we have made vegan tamales using vegetable oil instead of lard, using vegetable broth instead of beef or chicken broth, and with um, vegetarian filler options. Some people make sweet tamales. We have yet to do that. We keep saying we're going to do it, and we've never done it. But those, you can have cinnamon and um, raisins or dates, nuts, and things like that to make a sweet tamale. And I've had them; they're very good, but I've never made them. So hopefully we'll do that sooner than later. The purpose of this video is to kind of give you a big overview of what we do when we make the tamales and our suggestions. And um, so you can do it different ways. Other people, you can watch YouTube videos, learn how other people make them. You can try that, but we're going to show you how we do it and what we like. And so we don't like to be chewing on corn dough. We like a good balance between the dough. The dough really should complement the flavors of the filler. And so there should be a balance in our opinion. And that's what we shoot for when we make our tamales. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna share some images and a few brief videos, just kind of walking you through some of this stuff. So first thing is I'm gonna go just talk about the ingredients first. So the dry ingredients, you've got this big bag of masa mix. This is the brand Maseca And tamal, the color here is kind of a tan or peach color, whatever you want to call it. Um, and it's this particular bag is 4.4 pounds. We have seen them create larger bags, but this recipe is going to be for that 4.4 pound bag of mix. And um, notice that this says gluten free at the top. Everything here is gluten free. Even this baking powder, this particular brand is labeled as gluten free. So if you have people that you're in your home or friends that are gluten intolerant, as my some in my family are, this is important to note, and it's easy to make gluten free tamales. So there's no wheat product or gluten in this mix or these ingredients. So a large bowl, dump that bag in, 7.25 teaspoons of the baking powder, 4 teaspoons of salt, and chili powder uh, to your taste. And I'm going to say maybe uh, five, 5 or 6 tablespoons of chili powder for a large bag like this. Now, when you're learning to make this, you may want to split this recipe in half or even quarters and make a much smaller batch. So I'm not gonna do all the ratio math for you here, but you can scale it down and make smaller batches just to practice and get the feel of doing it. And so these are the basic dry ingredients. Then the next thing is broth. And so when we do beef tamales, we use beef broth. And well, we probably use this brand more than any others, but I don't think it really matters. And they do have a lower sodium version of these, and we'll use that if it's available. And so beef broth for beef tamales, chicken broth for chicken and pork tamales, vegetable broth for vegan tamales. So that's that. The other ingredient I'm not showing an image of is lard. And with the broth, you want 14 and a half cups of broth for the 4.4 pound bag of masa mix, right? Now, maybe it's easier to calculate if you are also aware that that 4.4 pound bag of masa mix is, in terms of volume, it's 14 and a half cups of masa mix. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio of the mix to your broth. And the broth gets heated, warmed, and then mixed in. You mix all your dry ingredients first, then you start to mix in your broth. And I'm going to show you a video in just a minute on Cindy doing that. And the last ingredient is the lard. And the lard we also like to melt and pour in as a liquid. It's when you're mixing this large of volume of this dough, it's just easier to incorporate that in there. And so we'll put that lard into a large mixing bowl, put it in the microwave, and turn it on and melt that lard down so it's a liquid. And that's the last ingredient to go in. So then beyond the ingredients themselves, then there's the corn husk that you use to some cultures have used banana leaves. Others use corn husk. I don't know what else is used, but those are the two common ones. What I want to show you here in terms of corn husk, when you buy corn husk, there are going to be some what we would say good corn husk, and there are bad. The bad, they're going to have a lot of corn silk on them. You're going to have to remove that. You don't want to incorporate floss, dental floss into your tamale. Remove that corn silk. good good husk, they will have cleaned almost all of that out. And the other thing is, you'll notice I show this perspective on this corn husk because it's very straight. There's not a lot of bumps, ups and downs in the corn husk. It's got these light ridges, but that's okay. But you don't want um, a lot of ups and downs, and I'll show you why. Because the next you can see in this package, you see this corn husk right here, and it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and down, up and down. And the reason is, in order to get a tamale that will stay together, you need to be pushing um, masa down into those crevices, and it's much harder to get a good spread on those uneven husks. And then when you do, to compensate for the bumps, the little crevices, you put more masa in. Yeah, that's fewer tamales that you can make because you're putting more of that dough into one tamale, and then that tamale is going to have more of the dough in it than what we prefer to have in our tamales. So we prefer to use the straight ones. You'll see there's some straight ones in here too, but if you're looking at corn husk, dried corn husk at the store, you might want to check this out before you buy them and make your decisions from there. Um, then, in order to use the tamales in order to use the corn husk for making the tamales, you'll want to soak them. I like to soak them in a warm water and let them get real soft and pliable. And then we like to these corn husks will often come at the wide end. They'll come 8, 10, maybe even 12 inches wide. They can be quite wide. Well, if you use one of those husks for a tamale, that's a lot of masa that goes out, and it's going to be a really big tamale. It's going to be, that big around or so. And again, we just don't think that's a real pleasant eating experience, but because there's just too much dough there, and you're not going to enjoy the filler. So we'll take those husks. If it's 8, 10 inches wide at that wide end, we'll just split it right in half and make 2 corn husks out of the one. And that's what you're seeing here in this image. You're seeing one that's not been split, and then below it is one that's been uh, split from a larger tamale. So that's our recommendation. Then the final thing you need to do with a corn husk is you need to dry off the excess water. After you soak it, you pull it out, drain what water you can, and then you lay them on towels. You split them, you lay them on towel, and then you just dab the excess water off. The reason you need to do that is because the masa has fat in it. It's got oil or lard in it, and you put oil and lard on water, and what's it do? It's going to slide. So when you try to slide, or when you try to apply that masa to the corn husk, it'll slide off and it won't stick. And you want it to stick. You want to be able to kind of paint that dough onto the corn husk. So you need to dry off the excess water. Now, we're not ready for that yet. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute to share a video. We've got we've talked about the dry ingredients. We've talked about the corn husk. Now I want to show you the incorporating of the broth and then the lard um, into the dry ingredients. So we are going to use this video right here. I'm going to play this. This is Cindy incorporating the broth into the dry ingredients. And as you see her working her fingers, she's looking for clumps to break them up so that the liquid can distribute more evenly through the whole mix. We have not yet incorporated the lard. You do the broth first, and then the lard. And so I'm going to share a brief video about that. The masa, the lard has been melted and it's being mixed into the whole mixture. And we prefer, it's not absolutely necessarily, but we prefer to melt the lard and to heat the broth because it allows, especially this kind of volume, it allows us to mix it together better. So what's happening there is we've poured the melted lard into the masa mix, and that's the last ingredient that goes in. You've already added, the baking powder, the salt, the chili powder is all mixed with the masa mix when it's dry. Then the broth, 14 and a half cups of broth, or 1 cup per cup of mix, and 7 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, 4 teaspoons of salt, and chili powder to your seasoning. Some people like to put cumin into the mix. We'll often put that in with the meat before we fill and roll the tamale. But then the lard is 5 cups of melted lard, and that gets incorporated in just as you've seen in that video. Once that's all put together and mixed in well, then we like to let that dough rest for at least a few hours. And since we're often doing this, making these in the wintertime when it's colder outside, we'll set that bowl out, we'll cover it, set it outside on our back patio for a few hours and let it cool off and let it sit and rest. And then if we do it the night before, we don't bring that dough in for a number of hours until after we've made it, it may be too cold to spread. So it needs to sit at room temperature for a little while. You want the consistency of that dough to be like peanut butter, so that when you take a glob of it with the back of a spoon and apply it onto the corn husk, and then you paint the bottom half of your corn husk with this masa. And I'm going to show you a video of Cindy spreading if I can find the right video. Yeah, here we go. You'll notice in this video that if you had a much larger corn husk, then it would be harder to manage as you're spreading the dough in there. So by splitting it into smaller corn husks, it's easier to hold while you're spreading the dough onto the corn husk. Notice also that she's not filling up the whole corn husk. She's leaving half of it empty, and I'm going to show you why here in just a second. So let me go back to the still images shortly, and we are going to go to the next image here. And what we have here is we are now assembling the tamale. She has spread the dough onto this corn husk. She's left part of it empty. And so on the dough part, we're going to put our filler. In this case, that looks like pulled pork. So I'm putting that in there. We're going to roll that up like a cigar, I guess. And then with this empty part, we're going to fold that over. That becomes like a tail, and we're going to fold that over, and we'll crimp the bottom edge of it right here so it's rigid. The tamale in the steamer is going to sit on that crimp. And so Um, that's that's why that's important. Now let's move on to the next image. Now we are ready to steam the tamales. If you are practicing with small batches, a Dutch oven will suffice just fine. And you find something that you can put in the middle of this pot that you can lean the tamales up against, but you can put them all in along the ridge. And with our Dutch oven, I think we could probably get around 40, 35 to 40 tamales. And now, if you're worried about them being too tall and not being able to put the top of your Dutch oven on, just get a piece of aluminum foil and tent it over the Dutch oven so that you're helping keep some of that steam in there to steam those tamales. When you are doing it in a Dutch oven, you will want about a quarter of an inch of standing water in the bottom of the Dutch oven. And you'll put that pot on your stove and turn it on about medium high, about a 4 to 5. If you're just going by the number on your dial, and a large burner. And you are not going to want to walk away for a long time. You need to keep water in that pan, and it's going to steam out pretty quickly when you're steaming it at that rate. So about every 10 minutes or so, you're at pouring a little bit more water. You're taking that foil or the lid off the pot, pouring some more water into the pan so that you constantly have a steam um, uh, water for the steam. Otherwise, those husks are going to start burning to the bottom of your pot. And I can tell you from experience, it's not fun cleaning off. You need some good SOS pads or um, something to that'll clean that stuff off the bottom of the pan, and your kitchen will stink, and you won't be happy. But yeah, so keep the water in there. But this is a good way to start without investing in a tamale steamer, which aren't really all that expensive. But if you already have the Dutch oven, try doing 30 or 40 tamales in a pot. And then what you need to know next. So the cooking time is about, it will vary depending upon the size of the pot and how many tamales you're steaming. So with a Dutch oven at about medium to high heat, you're going to be looking at about 45 minutes to steam those tamales. If you are going with a larger tamale steamer, like shown here, we have two different sizes of tamale steamers that we use, and we're often doing anywhere from 100 to 100 and maybe close to 200 tamales sometimes in one evening. And um, but again, you stand them on that crimped edge. With the tamale steamers, you have a false bottom, and so you can put maybe an inch of water, so inch and a half of water in the bottom. Put the false bottom in, and the steam just comes up through there, and you never have to. Assuming you've added enough water in the first place, you don't need to add more during the steaming time. But it is going to take longer. It's going to take probably at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I've even gone longer sometimes, depending upon the batch. But that is an idea of what that. So when you're getting close to the time that you think they should be ready, you can take the top off, take the foil off the Dutch oven, take the lid off the pot, whatever, and look into the top of these open ends of the tamales. Here you see the filler, here you see the dough, and here's the dough as well. And you'll notice that the corn husk is already self-separating from that dough, and that's an indication. And here's a separation right here. That's an indication that these tamales are done or about done. When if that corn husk can separate that quickly. And so I've got one more video to share, and this is basically when the tamale is done. And so I'm going to share this last, and I'm going to play this video. You know, let me check something here. Yeah, slide 15. Yeah, right there. All right, let me play this video. So we made a very small pot of tamales in our Dutch oven, just over 30. Basically because the masa, the dough, was not spreading like it normally does. So we figured that maybe something is wrong with the masa mix, or we did something wrong. So we just thought before we made a whole pot, huge pot, we would make a small one and see how it came out. So this is a good sign right here. I've been steaming these in the Dutch oven about 45 minutes. We already see how the corn husk is separated from the dough, and the dough is firming up here. So that's a pretty good sign. And we're just going to pull that and let it roll out, and that's a very good sign. That's what you want in a tamale, as far as the doneness after it's steaming. So I'm going to do you a favor and not eat this on this video. So that is a conclusion of the overview of the process, and a few more just thoughts about this is when I begin this, I cook the meat. I often cook the meat before we ever begin assembling tamales. And like I said, I smoke all the meat. So when I do that in the smoker, I bring it inside, I chop it up, and I put that meat in vacuum sealed bags. I take the air out of it and I throw it in the freezer. And they're in bags that are portioned so that it's easy whenever we want to make the tamales. I can pull a bag or two out, defrost them, and then I may heat them up with a little bit of broth, put some more seasoning in that meat, and then we'll fill and roll and steam the tamales. Then, when the tamales are finished steaming, I'll let those cool off, air cool for half an hour. If it's cold outside, I'll just stick the pot outside and then let them cool off a little bit, and then take them out of the pot, put them in often freezer bags, put them in my refrigerator overnight, let them cool completely, and then I will take some of those and put those in vacuum seal bags, vacuum seal them, freeze them so that they're ready to give away to friends, neighbors, or if we're going to have our party, that's what we do. We'll pull those out, we'll defrost them, heat them up, and serve them. And the flavor and the texture is very good. Not as good as pulling them straight out of the steamer, but I can't make them that quick for 200 people real time. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you'll try it, and I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and a healthy and safe 2021. God bless. Take care.